Everyone's seen the foldable phones that are out at this point, and like it or not, these phones are becoming more and more popular, and with more and more manufacturers jumping in and creating these foldable phones, there's more of a used market surrounding these older foldable phones, but is it worth it buying a used foldable phone? So contrary to popular belief, foldable phones do not just break out of nowhere. While they're not as tough as traditional phones, these foldable OLED displays can actually take a little bit of wear, especially if the factory installed screen protector is not removed. But with that said, the downside of that is that it's not uncommon to find broken foldables on eBay, and replacing the displays on these phones can be very expensive, costing more than the phone is worth in most situations. There is a positive side to this though, and that comes with the resale value. Since so many people are scared to buy a foldable phone due to the display damage or even total display failure, these phones actually become extremely cheap on the used market. Let's take this Galaxy Z Fold 3 that I got last summer. I paid about $150 to get that phone, and all it needed was an external display, which is about $150 to purchase on eBay. For about $300, this was essentially a fully working Z Fold 3, which was still extremely usable in 2023, and I'd assume it's still usable in 2024, seeing as the phone released back in 2021 for $1,800. It's not half bad to get an originally $1,800 phone for $300, especially when it was only one generation out of date when I bought it. I was also able to get a Galaxy Z Fold 2 in March for $180, and after putting about $35 worth of parts into the phone, I got an essentially brand new Z Fold 2 for $215. This phone is still pretty usable, and as it was an old stock phone that just needed new batteries, it was brand new, so it was in absolutely perfect condition. Phones like that are uncommon to find though, as they were listed below their average sale price. But the Z Fold 2 sells for around $260 on the used market, and for $260, this is a fully featured foldable phone. And even though it is slightly out of date and it no longer gets software updates, it's a good way to get into the foldable market for a good price. As for a newer foldable phone, let's say a Z Fold 3, which was extremely well received upon release in 2021, they can be picked up for about $310 on the used market. This isn't half bad, seeing as it's only a year newer, but it was a much more polished out experience, and by that time, most foldable issues were fixed, at least for the most part, and the phones were starting to get a lot more mainstream attention. I think that these phones are some of the funnest value phones, as they just have great specs, and owning a foldable is really just a good experience if you're using it the proper way. They're great for consuming content, they're great for multitasking, and overall, they're some of the most versatile phones out there. Last year, when I used the Z Fold 3, it actually got me to consider switching to Android and buying a Z Fold 5 when that came out instead of a 15 Pro, but I went for iPhones because I kind of got bored of Android, and the iPhone 15 Pro just looked so nice when it came out to me. As for repairs, these phones are expensive though. A simple outside display replacement can be over $100 easily, and the inside display can barely be found, but when you do find it, it's not even worth buying. I'd assume an inside display could easily sell for the same price as a whole used phone, if not more. It's also worth mentioning that there are some flaws to foldable phones, but I've went over those in my video from last summer where I went in depth about foldable phones. I really would recommend checking out that video. It's an older video of mine at this point, but it still is pretty good in my opinion. As for Google's foldable phones though, the newest Pixel Fold, which has an MSRP of $1,800 even though it's over a year old, typically sells for under $900 a lot of the times with accessories as well. I will note that Google phones go down in price really easily. I could barely even get $500 for my 8 Pro. I really had to try and get the highest amount for that phone when I sold it. So a lot of the time, these foldable phones really just don't hold their value. It's bad for people who want to buy a new foldable, but it is good for people buying used foldables. I would probably own a new foldable if I was an Android user, and that would be bad for me. But as most of my subscribers know, I am an iPhone user first, and I do like Androids. That's why I have the Z Fold 2. I did end up selling the Z Fold 3 that I had last year, but I do want to get a slightly newer Z Fold, maybe a 3 or a 4. I also want to try out the Flip series, which I'm probably going to do pretty soon actually. So with all that said, those were my thoughts on how folding phones are kind of becoming a really good value right now. If you like this video, a like would be appreciated, and if you want to see more content like this, you can subscribe. I would also recommend checking out my video that I did last year on folding phones. So with that said, have a good day, goodbye.